Welcome to Ahead of Their Game podcast. In this episode, I'm talking to Kevin, the Soul Assassin Ross, retired Muay Thai fighter with a career spanning over 2 decades. You'll discover how he was able to completely turn around his life after so much instability, the beauty of martial arts, and how it keeps you in the present moment with so many distractions in the world, and the importance of taking care of your physical and mental health to give you a better foundation, not just as a fighter, but as a person in your everyday life. I'm Graham Ginelli, and let's get to it.
So, Kevin, the Soul Assassin Ross, thank you so much for connecting with us here. For people that might not know, maybe in Europe, can you tell us a little bit about what you do and what you have done in the past? Just a little summary. I know there's a lot to tell, but
Yeah, sure. I was a professional Muay Thai fighter for 20 years. I just retired 2 years ago in June. Had my retirement fight. So that's what I've been doing the last 2 decades. But obviously there's a ton more that I do and am doing, which we can get into. But that's what people mainly know me for, is my fight career.
Okay. And going back to your first fight, like, what was that like to get into the ring for the first time? How take me back to the feelings. What were you feeling at that first fight?
Yeah.
Because you were 23, right? When you first started, you started quite late.
Yeah, extremely late. Particularly for someone who was able to make it to the level I got to. I mean, that's basically unheard of, to be able to do that. And that was something that kept me from going after this for so long. Was that I felt like I was too old to start, too old to make it anywhere, do anything with it. Because I had actually learned about the sport when I was about 14 years old. But it took me almost a decade to finally get over all my fears and doubts and excuses that I was giving myself not to do it. That's why I didn't start till I was almost 23. But I was never a violent person at all, which is ironic. I actually really hate violence to it.
Yeah.
It really, it always upsetted me. I never really understood. I was always a self-destructive person, but I never really understood taking that out on other people, which is what, a lot of people kind of do understand. So I've always been very, very quiet, not externally angry or anything. Again, like I said, it was more of an internal thing. So fighting was so foreign to me. If you had known me back then, no one ever would have thought that I was going to be a fighter. So I had really no basis for comparison of what to expect, what it was going to be like. But I guess I didn't really have any fear, in the sense that I didn't know what it was, really. I didn't really know what to expect, other than training for the 9 months that I did leading up to it. But there's nothing that can compare to what it's like to get in the ring. I mean, I tell people all the time, you could train your entire life and nothing can prepare you for what it's like to step foot in the ring, because it's there's nothing that can compare to that. I mean, you can train, you can practice, but when you're on stage, when it's real, when people are watching, when the violence is real, the threat of injury and even death is very real. There's no amount of training that can get you ready for that. You get a certain amount in to where you have your basic fundamental understanding of everything, but from that point forward, everything extra is not really going to help you anymore. You just got to take that dive off the cliff, and then once you do that, you can see where you're at, what it was like, and then how to progress forward from that point.
Okay. And where did you grow up, and how do you think that affected, like, who you became? Do you think by where your surroundings, your friends, how did that have an impact on your early life?
Yeah. So I grew up all over the place, actually. My parents split up when I was really young. I think I was 8 years old when they divorced. And prior to that, I mean, I was really living the typical American dream. Both my parents were working. My dad was in real estate. We lived in a real nice neighborhood. You know, it was just that typical American kind of dream
Mm.
life, and that's what I was born into and what I thought life was to that point. And then when they split up, that my entire world just got flipped upside down. I went from living in a really nice neighborhood, nice house, nice community, to living in a basement with my three siblings and my mom, and growing up on welfare. And then we were moving every couple months. We would move. So I grew up all over the country because we moved so frequently,
Yeah.
and I was just getting ripped out of schools, out of friendships. So instability was what I was became accustomed to, which in the long run and actually ended up helping, because obviously life is crazy and like fighting's crazy and all these things happen. You have to be able to adapt to these
Yeah.
things that happen just overnight, you know. So um, that I think that really helped my mindset and my game once I started fighting, because I had already gone through so much kind of trauma and difficulty, that I was able to apply that
Yeah.
into the fighting realm. Yeah, so growing up, it was just craziness, just a lot of craziness, and then once I moved to Vegas, which was when I was 14, 15, and that's when I learned about the sport. I started getting into drugs and alcohol when I was like 12 years old, and then once
Mm.
I moved to Vegas, it was like pouring gasoline on a fire. You know, it's just a
Mm.
really toxic place to be if you're inclined to that kind of lifestyle. So I really got um, overwhelmed by that that Vegas scene and everything. So I was just drinking and partying every single day, up until the point that I turned my life around and started going after this dream I had of becoming a fighter. So that was pretty much all I knew, was just pissing my life away.
Yeah. And the turning point, would you, if you were to look back at one thing, what would you say the turning point was? Was it just one
Uh,
thing or was it various things?
it was a lot of things, but the biggest one was one of my best friends passed away. Um, when in 97. So I was 17 years old, 17, 18. And he passed away. And he was actually the only person I'd ever told about this dream I had of becoming a fighter.
Mm.
And when I had told him, expecting him to laugh about it, he didn't laugh, and he told me that I should do it. You know, he's like, if anybody can do this, you can. And as I said, if you'd known me back then, there's no reason he should have thought that or believed that. And that always stuck with me. And then once he passed away, um, I promised myself that I would go after this dream that I had of doing this. You know, it really hit me that here was this kid who didn't even have a chance to go after anything.
Yeah.
You know, he had his whole entire life stripped away, and here I am, just too afraid to go after it because of all the excuses that I was giving myself. But unfortunately, his death really sent me right over the edge, and it took me about 5 more years till I was able to crawl out of that hole. But yeah, that was looking back, that was that pivotal moment that sent me on the path. But it was also the exact same thing that sent me farther down the opposite way. But eventually, I actually had a near death experience the year prior to starting, and when that happened, it really just made it apparent to me that I'd been wasting the last 5 years ever since promising my friend that I'd turn my life around.
Mm.
You know, it's like I promised that I would live my life for him because he didn't get to, and since that point, I've been just making it so much worse. You know,
Yeah.
really, I was basically trying to kill myself without using a gun.
I think he'd be really proud of you, to be fair, knowing
Yeah,
what I've read about you and what I've, from what I've seen and read, it just, the way you've transformed things and moved things around, like he'd be super proud. I wanted to ask you, when you're in that mode, when you're in fight mode, you're in the ring, does everything kind of disappear? Are you so focused that things disappear from the outside world? Did you feel more comfortable inside, or how was that
yeah,
feeling?
yeah. It's the one of the very few things that makes you present in life. You know, you can't think about anything other than being in the moment. You can't, there's no time for thought.
Yeah.
You know, it's all feeling, it's all reaction, it's all being in the moment and being present. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things about fighting and martial arts, and really difficult things like that, because it forces you to be in the moment. And so few things in this life allow us to be present. We get distracted by the future, we get distracted by the past, about all the chaos that's going on in the world, all these things that we have zero control over, you know, and they strip us away from living in the moment. And fighting is one of those things where you don't really have a choice, because you've got somebody in front of you that's trying to put your lights out. So yeah, I think it's one of the most beautiful things there is. And I do feel more alive and more present, and yeah, in those moments of being in the ring. It's just, I think it's the greatest feeling there is.
And now, what's your kind of morning routine now? I mean, how many hours are you spending in the gym now? Are you spending less or the same, or?
Yeah, way less. I mean, when you're a professional fighter, it's like a full-time job. People don't realize how much training and time goes into it, in and outside of the ring. You know,
Yeah.
it's not just the actual training in the gym. It's the mental, it's the diet, it's everything that goes into it. So but I still work out every day and make sure that I'm at least staying healthy, because I know that's something that I'm gonna have to do for the rest of my life. If I don't, I slip right back into that place that I used to be very, very quickly and easily. I actually took a month off after I retired, and I didn't do anything, and it was just the worst. It was so bad. I was like, we can't live like this. So we at least gotta get up and go for a walk every day. So I started doing that, and then I
Yeah.
started doing a little bit more, and then got back into the gym. And I was like, all right, so this is just something you got to do forever.
Yeah. What would you say to other fighters that have to make that transition into retirement? You know, any advice? What would you give them? Because I know it must be
Yeah,
difficult.
it is. I mean, it was difficult for me, and I was somebody that I was always prepared for it, because I never felt like I was even going to have a fight, because of how, again, how late I started and all those reasons I had not to do this. So for me, every day was the last day there was. I never looked towards the future. So I
Mm.
was always expecting or prepared for retirement, for injuries, for death, basically. So I think I was a lot more equipped to handle retirement than a lot of people are, where that's like their entire identity. And that's why it's really difficult for people to make that transition once they retire, is that's all they know,
Yeah.
you know. And then it's like, once you retire, who am I now, you know? But I think one is, you can still uh, taking care of your physical and mental health is the most important thing. What you do with it from there, I mean, you, that's just a matter of the person. But if you're not taking care of those things, you have no foundation, you have no
Yeah.
base, you have nothing to build on top of. So um, that's the one constant when you are training, is you are taking care of yours. You have to take care of yourself physically
Yeah.
and mentally. Even though there's a lot of fighters kind of take a break when they after a fight, and go off the deep end, and kind of let themselves be destroyed. But fighting is that one thing that always brings them back, and they're able to regroup and get back to that thing. So I would um, highly encourage people to make sure that's something they're taking care of, because if you're not taking care of that, you're not going to be able to build anything on top of it, because inevitably it'll all come crumbling down. Once you have a bad day, once you have some events in your life, things are just going to fall apart. So if you can take care of your health, making sure you're physically and mentally active every day, or consistently, that's one of the biggest things. And if you are fighting right now, you need to prepare yourself for that moment. It is coming.
Yeah.
Hopefully it comes when you want it to, but most of the time it's not coming when you want it to.
Yeah.
It's going to happen after maybe a bad fight, maybe a bad injury, and then we typically don't prepare ourselves for these bad moments. We assume everything's going to go the way we want it to. Everybody wants to think they're going to die at 100 years old in bed asleep, but that's not really the average, you know. So being prepared for bad things, I think,
Yeah.
is incredibly important, and not assuming. I mean, it was the same thing in training for me. I trained so that way when I'm at my worst, I'm still better than most people's best. You know, we typically tend to assume that everything's gonna just work out well. You know, we're gonna fight. We're gonna feel great on fight day. We're gonna be healthy on fight day.
Yeah.
Everything's gonna go well when we get in there, just like it does in the gym. But if you're not prepared for the worst things that can and probably will happen, you're just gonna fold when they do.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. I
and
mean, I totally understand what you mean. I mean, I was really lucky from a really young age. My granddad had me on a racquetball court playing squash and racquetball from like, that's one of my first memories from 3 or 4 years old. And having that from a young
yeah,
age, I think now, like if I don't do one day of exercise, I start to feel it like really
oh
bad.
yeah,
And you feel your
yeah,
mood changing. And I mean, in the car, you see a lot of, well, I suppose all over the world, but here in Spain, a lot of road rage and a lot of angry people.
yeah,
And like, you
uh-huh.
just think if you did cardio, like every day,
Yeah,
not even like half an hour, 20 minutes, they'd be a different people. And I feel like a different person when we do exercise. That's what I'm
for
trying to
sure.
instill in our kids, you
Oh,
know?
I mean, we'd have a completely different world. And as you said, it's that tension that gets built up when you're releasing all of that physically. You don't you don't have that energy to expel, you know, or you're able to take things as they are, not what they feel in the moment. You know, it gives you that little bit of a buffer to not be so reactive to things that happen, externally or internally. But when we don't have that, it's just this tension that continually builds and builds and builds. And eventually it's going to come out in really negative ways.
Yeah.
But if you're intentionally putting forth that effort every single day, or regularly, you're releasing that. It's like medicine. You know, the more, if we could all do that, this
Yeah.
world would be a very, very different place.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And I also wanted to talk about the book. You know, your Instagram, like, is really cool. And some of the quotes there and videos that you've done are just
Uh,
really inspiring. But have you written the book now, or is it in process, or is it done?
so I actually have two books written. I'm in the process of writing my autobiography, which I'm just being really lazy about. I was writing it pretty consistently for a really long time, like 10 years, but I was also fighting full time and training full time.
Mm.
So it was really one of those things. I did a little bit every day, but I was being consistent. And then when I was training for my retirement fight, it was something that I had to just put off to the side, because writing about your life, particularly like difficult things, trauma and that kind of stuff, it's it's difficult to process, because
Yeah.
you kind of relive a lot of that while you're writing it. So I didn't want to let anything distract me while I was going into my last fight. I was like, this is my last one. I have no time or energy for anything other than this. So I put it down while I was training for that, and I haven't been able to pick it back up, but it's on
Mm.
my list to do. Um, Next week, Monday. I have it scheduled now. So I'm gonna get into, and I've pretty much written the whole thing. I just got to go back and edit it and clean it up a bit.
Yeah.
So that's something that's always been on the back burner. And then yeah, those other two books I have, which is Dancing with Sanchai, which is about my fight with Sanchai and my training leading up to it and everything. That one's available on my website. And then Soul is my other book, which was a collaboration piece I did with this other guy, Johnny Riley. I think that one's actually out of stock right now. I got to reprint probably both of those.
Mm. Cool. And also like the t-shirt, I saw a really cool t-shirt as well, which I'm
Uh,
gonna get. I'm gonna get that as the first thing I'm gonna do. It's really, really nice. And
which
because
one is that?
I'm not sure. I think I saw it on the website. It was either on the website.
Yeah,
I think it was on the web. Yeah, there was a
yeah.
T-shirt, and
Well, I
it
got a
was.
couple, so I wasn't sure which one it was.
Oh right, okay, probably both. I'll probably get both.
Yeah,
And just quickly going back, like advice in terms of your younger self, if you could go back and sort of like, because being that hero, I've heard you talk about it before, being that hero that you needed at the time. What would you say to
yeah.
your younger self? if you could give your
Yeah.
younger self any advice?
Oh man. I think that one of the biggest things for myself and for a lot of aspects of life is to take control of things you have control over. There's so many aspects of life, so many things that happen that are outside of our control, things that happen to us, even if it was our fault. It's like, what are you gonna do with it now? You have this thing, uh, whatever it was, what it happened, whether it's in your mind or whether it was a real thing that happened. We all have a choice on what we do with it, and that's where we tend to not take control, and because we always have someone we can blame, something we can blame, where we grew up, the things that happened to us, teachers, parents, government, cops, whatever it is, and those things might be real and relevant, but it still doesn't free us from the responsibility of what we do with it. Like, what are you going to do about it, and what can you do about it? Are there things you have control over? You have control over your attitude. You have control over um, what you do on a daily basis, even if it's just in your mind.
Yeah.
And I think it's so easy to point externally to these things. If we look internally and take control of that, uh, we'll start to see things improve. And even if it's just our perspective, you know, even if it's just you have no control of so many of these aspects of your life, there's nothing you
Yeah.
can do about it. So sitting there and dwelling on it, being angry about it, letting it destroy you isn't doing any good, and you're doing that to yourself. And once we realize that, um, we we start to grow, get stronger, get better. um, and that was something that fighting forces you to learn, that you have to take control of what you have control over, like training for a fight. The more you can control all of these aspects of your health, your diet, your strength, your conditioning, once you have that base, you're going to be more prepared when things go wrong in the
Yeah.
ring, because all of that is so out of your control. I mean, you can control everything up to that point, but once you get in there, I mean, you get sick, you get injured, you get caught with a shot that you didn't see coming. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just a perfect metaphor for how life is. I mean,
I,
that's the way that life is.
I was really fortunate to interview a guy that owns a soccer club in Liverpool, on the Wirral, which is in the northwest of the UK.
Yeah.
And he's very strange because he's a psychologist, trained psychologist, ex-soccer player, and now the CEO, the co-owner. And he was telling
Wow.
me that when he used to work in London, he would, on the tube in the morning on the train, he'd write down his anger. And he said, I bet you can't write that for more than 5 minutes. It's so true that you try writing down your anger for 5 minutes. He called it
Wow.
the 8-year-old Mark Palios test, which is write down your anger. It's in 3 stages. The second stage would be like to make yourself feel much better. When I was 8, do you think I would have? And then you would complete the sentence. So when you're
Wow.
8 years old, do you think I would have, in your case, become a successful Muay Thai fighter? And he said it can
Wow.
get a bit samey after a while. You could end up writing like, but it's making you feel more assured. And then the third
Yeah.
point would be, what am I going to do today to maybe it's something in the office, in your job, or in your day-to-day life? And having that 3-part system, he said,
Yeah.
really over time really helps. And I thought that was fascinating that this guy wrote everything down, almost like a diary, but not like,
Yeah.
today I went to the shops, today I did this. No, it has to be in that 3-part structure. So I just
Yeah.
thought that was, interesting for people.
What's your training every day? What do you do at the gym?
A lot.
A
A
lot.
lot. What do I do now, or what did I used to
I mean,
do
now
when I
when
was fighting?
When you started like training?
Yeah. Um, well, it was a lot, so it'd be hard for me to break it down, but I'll simplify it. So typically I would wake up 5 or 6 in the morning, go for my run, which was anywhere from 3 to 10 miles. Then I do shadow boxing, bag work. Typically mornings, I would just do my own thing like that. Maybe some conditioning, and then some like body weight stuff, sit ups, pull ups, push ups, and then my afternoon session be another run, pad work, sparring, clinching, and then also in there somewhere is weightlifting or conditioning. So I mean,
Wow.
all of that is like almost every single day is some aspect of those things, and then they vary a little bit day to day, but that's kind of the general every day, and that's 5-6 days a week,
It was
twice a
because
day.
I actually was going to ask you before, misconceptions about your field that I think like some people might not realize how much goes in on a daily
Yeah,
basis, like behind the
it's
scenes.
it's so
Incredible.
much. It's
Wow.
kind of ridiculous.
And how did it go on the lion fight official? Just to quickly finish with the lion fight you were commentating. How did that go? What's it like to commentate
Oh
now?
yeah. Yeah, I enjoy it. You know, that was probably the 5th or 6th time I've commentated. First time for Lion Fight, although they've had me come in and commentate like a fight here and there, like as a guest, but not the whole card. But yeah, I really do enjoy it. I enjoy being able to watch the fights, talk about the fights, especially being a not having to be the color commentator who has to like really drive the show and be that guy that's constantly talking. I can just give my opinion, talk about some technical aspects that most people wouldn't really understand unless they've done the sport before. So it's nice to be able to do that, and I'm just trying to get as many opportunities as I can, so I can really develop. But I'm starting to feel really good and comfortable doing that. So yeah, it was fun. I had a good time.
Brilliant. Well, thank you again so much.